Let's be honest from the start. There's something inside you that's restless. It's not a lack of success. It's not a lack of recognition. It's not a lack of pleasure. It's excess. Excess of stimulation, excess of distraction, excess of discharge, and, paradoxically, a scarcity of depth. Carl Jung never treated sexual energy as something vulgar or merely biological. For him, libido was not just sexual desire. It was vital psychic energy. It was creative force. It was an impulse for transformation. The problem isn't desire, the problem is what you do with it. We live in an era where the most powerful energy of the human being has been reduced to entertainment, something to relieve tension, something to fill boredom, something to avoid silence. But Jung said something profoundly disturbing. Everything that does not become conscious returns as fate. If you don't understand your libido, it governs your life. If you don't control your impulses control you. And most people today live controlled, not by external tyrants, but by internal compulsions. Abstinence, in the Jungian context, is not moral repression. It's not religious denial. It's not punishment. It's strategic restraint. It's creating a space between impulse and action. And it is in this space that power is born. When you interrupt the automatic cycle of stimulus, excitement, discharge, emptiness, something begins to happen. At first, discomfort, then restlessness, then accumulated tension, and then clarity. The energy that was previously discharged begins to circulate. It rises, it seeks new forms of expression. This is called sublimation. Jung saw sublimation as one of the highest mechanisms of the psyche. It's not about suppressing desire, it's about transforming it. The same force that drives the sexual act can drive artistic creation, strategic vision, physical discipline, leadership, spirituality. But this requires friction, and most people avoid friction. Have you ever noticed that during periods of restraint, voluntarily or by circumstance, something changes? Your gaze becomes firmer, your posture more solid, your mind more focused. It's not superstition, it's psychic economy. Every unfulfilled impulse creates tension, and tension is potential energy. Modern society teaches you to relieve all tension immediately. But growth requires enduring tension without collapsing. This is where the shadow comes in. Jung constantly spoke of the shadow, that repressed, instinctive, primitive part that you prefer not to look at. Libido is part of this shadow. When you ignore it, it manifests as compulsion. When you blindly repress it, it manifests as neurosis. But when you consciously observe it, it becomes fuel. There is a gigantic difference between repression and containment. Repression is denying that desire exists. Containment is recognizing desire and choosing not to obey it. This act of choice strengthens something fundamental: willpower. Today, many suffer not from a lack of ability, but from a lack of consolidated willpower. Every time you automatically give in, you train your mind to obey impulse. Every time you consciously resist, you train your mind to obey intention. This reconfigures your internal structure. Jung called this process individuation, becoming who you truly are, instead of being governed by unconscious forces. But individuation demands sacrifice. It demands crossing the inner desert. It demands enduring the emptiness that appears when you stop numbing yourself with immediate pleasure. Many confuse sexual desire with a need for connection. Others confuse excitement with purpose, and culture reinforces this. Images, stimuli, promises of constant pleasure. But constant pleasure weakens the capacity to endure frustration. And without frustration, there is no character building. Voluntary abstinence is psychological training, not against sex, but against compulsion. When you interrupt the automatic discharge cycle, you begin to realize something surprising. Much of the desire was not physical. It was anxiety seeking relief. It was boredom seeking stimulation. It was insecurity seeking validation. When you remove the escape, the truth appears. And this truth can be uncomfortable. You begin to perceive your needs, your insecurities, your projected fantasies. Here enters another central Jungian concept: anima and animus. We all carry within us a psychic counterpart, the inner masculine and feminine. When this integration doesn't happen, we desperately seek outside what we don't recognize within. Sexual obsession is often an unconscious attempt to find outside what needs to be integrated internally. Abstinence creates enough silence for this internal dialogue to occur, and when it begins to happen, something profoundly changes. You stop chasing, you begin to choose. Sexual energy, when contained, doesn't disappear. It accumulates. And accumulated energy, magnetism. Not that theatrical magnetism, but a silent presence, a firmness, an emotional stability. Have you ever noticed how some people enter a room and the atmosphere changes? It's not appearance, it's not wealth, it's consolidated energy. People who don't constantly leak their energy, people who aren't governed by urgencies, people who can look at desire and not move automatically. This generates depth, this generates respect, this generates real power. But be warned, this is not a call to extremism. Jung didn't advocate absolute denial of sexuality. He advocated awareness. Abstinence is not an end. It's a means of reorganizing your relationship with impulse. If you can't go a few weeks or months without giving in to constant stimuli, this reveals dependence. And dependence always implies a loss of sovereignty. True power lies not in never desiring. It lies in being able to desire and choose. Most people don't choose. They react, and constant reaction prevents the construction of a solid identity. Libido is life energy. If you continually disperse it, you feel empty. If you contain it without direction, you feel frustrated. But if you channel it, you feel powerful. Channeling means giving form, physical discipline, intellectual creation, professional project, art, spirituality, leadership. This energy needs structure. Without structure, it becomes chaos. With structure, it becomes creative force. Do you understand now? It's not about morality. It's about psychic alchemy, transforming raw impulse into refined power. Jung saw the psyche as a symbolic system. Sexual desire is just one of the languages of this system. When you learn to read the language, you stop being manipulated by it. And here's something few admit. A mind constantly stimulated sexually loses depth of focus. The brain gets used to quick dopamine spikes. Then, common tasks seem uninteresting. This erodes discipline. Abstinence rebalances this sensitivity. Small achievements once again generate satisfaction. Long-term projects seem possible again. Patience returns, and patience is power. But there is a price: temporary loneliness, internal confrontation, awareness of one's own shadow. That's why few sustain this path, because there are no applause, there is no external validation, there is silence. But it is in this silence that you find yourself. And when you find yourself, something fundamental changes. You stop seeking fulfillment. You begin to act with direction. Your presence becomes less anxious. Your speech becomes more precise. Your energy stops fluctuating so much. And people feel it. Because stability is rare, self-control is rare, sovereignty is rare. Conscious abstinence is a tool to recover this, not as a denial of life, but as an affirmation of inner mastery. When Jung spoke of facing the inner dragon, he wasn't talking about destroying the instinct. He was talking about riding it. Taming is not killing. It's integrating. The fire doesn't need to be extinguished. It needs to be directed. And when directed, it illuminates. When wasted, it burns. The final question is not whether you should abstain. The question is, are you the master of your energy or its prisoner? Because that answer defines your path. Every time the desire arises, try something simple. Don't react immediately. Observe, breathe. Ask yourself, does this build me up or empty me? If you decide to act, be conscious. If you decide to hold back, be strategic, but don't be automatic. That's where true power begins, not in the external act, but in the internal choice. And that choice, repeated over time, transforms character, transforms presence, transforms destiny. Jung was right. That which you make conscious ceases to govern you, and the energy you learn to master becomes your ally. The rest is consequence.